After Dark College Football. George Whitfield, joined by my two co-pilots, pride of We Are Penn State, Christian Hackenberg, and the prodigal son of two of college football's biggest towns, Oklahoma and Texas A&M, Mr. Trevor Knight. Fellas, how we doing?
George, what a day of college football, man. I mean, you talk about mid-season form, and we are at mid-season, and we had some fantastic matchups today. I mean, I was like a kid in a candy store in front of the TV all day watching some of these quarterbacks throw it around, these coaches make crazy calls, and just some fantastic finishes across the country that I know we'll dive into tonight.
Alabama drops. Clemson just dropped. Or no, sorry, Alabama dropped. The Trojans dropped. There's a couple other big-time knockouts. Hack, I know you caught the games.
No, I mean, my ass is chapped right now. I can't really talk too much. My guys got pummeled up and down the field, and I had higher expectations than that. So I'm gonna pick it up, pick the energy up, bring it back. But that's where I'm at right now.
And tell Pop, we see where Pop is at too. Tell Pop we said what's up. What's up, Pop?
Yeah, George says what's up, Pops.
All the Field of 12 Nation. Yeah. We all say hello, Mr. Hackenberg. How we doing, sir?
Yeah. He's back here doing his thing.
All right. So if you're joining us, Field of 12 After Dark College Football, you can see us on Sirius XM, produced by Dagan Hughes and Trevor Valace. Fellas, let's do a toast. If you're just joining us, if you've always been with us, we do a toast to our favorite thing, player game. Trevor Knight, do I dare start with you?
Please start with me, George. There is a lot of really, really good football going on this weekend. As I mentioned, we could make a toast and spend our whole show talking about different guys, different coaches, different fan bases. I'm going to go a little off the beaten path. It's not the beaten path, but it's not in our two biggest games that we'll talk about. But I want to shout this guy out as a first-year head coach in a new spot who has led a team that was, I believe, pretty much unanimously picked in the bottom half on every preseason poll of their conference. And they won a massive game today. The TCU Horned Frogs, Sonny Dykes. Sonny Dykes, I am toasting to you. You moved right down the road from Dallas to Fort Worth, and you are getting it done on a big, big stage. Cheers to you.
Yes, sir, Coach, and the Hogs. What's their hand signal?
Go Frogs, baby.
Yeah.
Frogs.
The Frogs, big win. They've had a big month. Christian Hackenberg, where are you taking us?
Yeah, so I don't really know where I'm taking this. This was a little bet I lost on Thursday night to Greg, who hosted that show with Clint and I. I was extremely high on my Nittany Lions, as I said. He picked Michigan, I picked Penn State. Michigan obviously came out and did what they did, 418 yards on the ground, up and down. All my, here's what you need to watch for, all that shit went up in smoke. So I got a shotgun this Bush Light to Greg Waddell for his Michigan pick. So to you guys and your health.
Hey, hold on. I'm not gonna make you do this alone.
Oh, my guy. I knew you were there.
I toast both of y'all. Got into both of them.
Trev.
Cheers, boys.
To your health, sir.
Hey. This is to you at home, this is an honorable show. We hold our word immensely, as you just saw there. Christian Hackenberg holding his word. Trevor went with TCU. I'm going to Tennessee. I mean, just feels obvious, but you gotta imagine the road they came, and with a secondary toast to Cam Rising here at Utah. But Hendon Hooker, just 2 years removed from not being able to overcome everything at Virginia Tech, got beat out, transferred, looking for another opportunity, which we all are ever looking for another opportunity, gets to Tennessee, gets it going, new coach. After his first year, they get rolling, and then they take out the Roman army. They take out the Roman army and now are destined to finish. They're going to wake up tomorrow in the top 5 in the country. and probably have to see Alabama again if they can get past the White Walkers. So epic win tonight in Knoxville. Hack, what's Hendon Hooker doing at this moment? Any guesses? You want to even put a guess on it, Trevor?
I don't even want to do it. Don't even want to do it to that young man. I saw him hugging his mama after the game, and putting him on blast like that, probably not a good thing to do. So.
Hopefully it's a free steak down there at the steakhouse. Hendon Hooker.
Probably ordered some Papa John's and is sitting in his apartment with his guys, just reminiscing.
Yeah, sitting with the guys.
Watching a little Pac-12 after dark, kicking the feet out, about to brush his teeth and snuggle up with his blankie and go to sleep. That's all.
That's right.
Tell you what.
He'll have some type of company though. Believe that. I mean, with his roommates in the building and all that stuff. Off we go. First game tonight. We're going to go over with you. For those of you who just joined us, watching Utah and USC and a knockout blow. This is the game, fellas, we've been talking about since the preseason. The Trojans will come in here undefeated into the biker gang's bar. Could they get through it? If they can get through it, we'll see them in the playoffs. It did not go that way. Trevor, your initial thoughts of Cam Rising and Coach Whittingham knocking out USC?
Well, I think it's something that will continuously come up as we talk through this game, but it all came down to the last play that Utah had on offense, and it's going for two. Incredible decision there. I love the decision to do that. I thought that Utah got hit in the mouth and hit in the mouth and hit in the mouth and could have folded at any point in this game, and Cam Rising kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And that will be the story of the day with these quarterbacks. I thought this was, on a macro level, one of the better days of quarterback play in college football that I've seen in a long time. And Cam Rising is right there at the top of that list with just his gutty effort all night long. It was fun to watch.
It's a blue-collar effort, Hack, when you watch him. It's not a whole bunch of chrome Ferrari look like you see from Aaron Rodgers and Kyler Murray and some of the other guys. But just like Hendon Hooker, Cam Rising didn't start college at Utah. Transferred, got in there. What did he start at? Texas, right?
Texas, yeah.
Got to Texas, battled, made a decision, a real business move. Where can I go set up shop and lead a set of troops? He goes to Utah. They get it done tonight. What was your biggest impression from watching this? And are the Pac-12's chances in the playoffs effectively done tonight?
Yeah, well, so I'll answer the latter there first. I don't think the Pac-12's chances at the playoffs are effectively done. They still have some unbeatens. They still have some teams that have some chance, or do they not? They don't have any unbeatens.
They have the Bruins, right? UCLA Bruins.
But did UCLA lose, or did they not? Is UCLA undefeated or not?
They're undefeated.
So okay. So UCLA is undefeated. So if UCLA is undefeated, they still got a shot. However, I think that this definitely hurts. I think the SC team kind of had that chrome and Ferrari flash that you were talking about. I think Caleb played like that tonight. Just didn't make enough plays when it mattered. And then flipping it back to Utah, Cam Rising, blue collar attitude. George, you've known me since I was 16 years old. Trev, you got to know me for a while now here as well. Love the blue collar attitude. Love guys that just put the boots on, go to work, don't really complain, figure it out, and keep it moving. Cam, if I was to put a guy who's like the action figure for that mentality in college football, it might be him. Yeah. And he definitely sell out. Does a great job up there. And I think that this team just continues to fight, continues to battle. They may not be where they thought they would be at this point in the season coming into the year, but at the end of the day, didn't let that affect them. And they're cool with playing spoiler right now. And I think that's it's a testament to the program. And it's a testament to the mentality from the top down that the head coach out there, preaches and instills in all those guys.
Can we talk about Kyle Whittingham for just a second? We were talking offline before the show started that he's the second longest tenured coach behind Kirk Ferentz in college football. But I think it's interesting and different. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on this just real quick. A guy that's been at Utah that long, that has had so much success, but it is difficult to recruit guys up to Utah. I know it's very interesting comparatively. Will a transfer portal help him like it already has with Cam Rising, or is he just found a way to take whoever is willing to come and produce, a great level of football that we've seen, obviously tonight and in years past? I think he deserves the tip of the cap, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. And Hack, I agree. I think it's both. I don't you need the portal. Like Salt Lake, what's the state of Utah produce? Maybe a half dozen Division I kids a year. Then you're either going to go west to California, you're going to go south to Texas. So you need the portal, but he is getting the most out of players and he does develop and culture. So we're going to overwhelm a lot of these, a lot of that gap with just grit and, as our producer calls it, BMG. Or be it BGM, biker gang mentality. That's it. And we're just gonna beating ass is a great quotient to a lot of situations if you can just put your head down.
The other thing too, George, is I think there's some allure to Salt Lake. And Trevor, I think you've been to Salt Lake, obviously, correct? At some point in time. I've been to Salt Lake for a period of time. It kind of I grew up East Coast, never really saw much of that stuff. When you get to Salt Lake, it's a nice area, nice city, great, so cool, really super cool. I think it's one of those things where if he gets a kid to come to campus, it's a pretty easy thing to sell. So I think it's just one of those things of overcoming the fact that you're kind of sandwiched in the middle, and if you can trick a couple guys, hey, this is actually, with the right mentality, this is actually pretty cool place to go to school, pretty cool place to play. And to your point, I think that biker gang mentality is awesome. And if you recruit the right kids with the right makeup, you got a recipe for success there.
Utah, and I'm checking right now with our producer. This was Utah's third opponent, ranked in the top 7 already this year, and they've had a tough go of it with Florida and UCLA, and now they do get the Trojans. They split the city of Los Angeles. Utah tonight in a final, big balls tonight by Coach Whittingham, 43-42. What now happens to the Pac-12? Is it already over? We're not even close to Halloween. Is it already over for the Pac-12's chances? Here we go now to the heavyweight championship. And that's all respect to UCLA. I know we keep saying that, but for the Bruins to come from such an outside lane, and they still have a tough run here coming down the backstretch in November. The light's still on, but USC brand wise was the one they were all hoping to crash that party for them. Okay. So the biggie, Knoxville, biggest game in 25 years since, who did you say Hack beat Alabama? Eric Ainge, but the most hype game since Peyton Manning, since the Peyton Manning days. The Tennessee Vols defeat the Roman Army 52-49 in a classic. It gave you everything you wanted to see, and we learned every possible thing we could learn. I thought this was going to get ugly quick. Tom Rinaldi told me one time on the sideline, I think we were at the Rose Bowl, Florida State and Oregon, and Jameis slipped and the ball comes out of his hand up in the sky. It's a reverse fumble. And Rinaldi turns to me and he goes, "The king never just dies. He gets killed." And I thought, holy shit, I'm watching the game. The king never does just die peacefully. They get killed. And when they were down 28-10 tonight to Tennessee, I thought, this is the killing. But the Roman Army comes rolling back. But it wasn't enough. Hack, what did you most take away from this game? And what did you learn the most about the two teams first? And then we'll go into the quarterbacks.
Well, it was extremely impressive. And I think I'll start with Tennessee. I think the development of that program and where Josh Heupel is, it was a perfect storm for him. And he needed this win for that next step to be much larger than I think he could have ever imagined. And hats off for getting that done. I thought the offense played really well, answered the bell at pretty much every turn of the corner. And I thought the defense showed some balls too, man. I mean, that whole last drive there, they pretty much went 0 for 7-8 plays in a row. Just sent the house, said, "Hey, we're going to match up with these guys." So cover zero is basically like they have no high safety. They're going to match up with the guys outside, and they're going to try to get an extra hat on the quarterback outside of what you can protect. And
why is that ballsy against such an advanced quarterback like Bryce Young?
And Bryce Young, you're playing matchup ball, and Bryce Young the entire game has showed an immense ability to just get out of. He wins those one-on-ones in the open field against pretty much any edge rusher, any defensive lineman that you can bring, any linebacker you can bring. He did it. He extended the plays, made plays, scored touchdowns throughout the entire game doing that. So for that to be like, hey, like, we're going to smoke it if we got it and hang our hat on that, like, huge tip of the cap to the Tennessee defensive staff right there, because I personally, I don't think I would have gone into that situation 3rd and 10 right on the fringe of field goal range. Like, hey man, I'm going 0 here. No, dude, I don't think I could have ever dreamed that up. So like, huge tip of the cap to them. And I think it's just kind of a fruition of like Tennessee, like coming from the grinder, right? Because like you talked about Peyton Manning, even Eric Ainge and those types of days, like Tennessee was a powerhouse.
T. Martin,
powerhouse program, correct. And they've kind of gone into the dark ages here for a little bit, and now coming back out of it with Josh Heupel, great win. And I think it's huge for them in their development.
Huge for recruiting, huge for the portal. Trevor, massive. Just imagine that now. That style of play, that Ferrari style, NASCAR style of play. Big plays, big time skill players. Really, I mean, if you're west of the Mississippi, that program is SC. If you're east of the Mississippi, we thought it was up in Columbus, but they're going to split half those kids now, half those big time kids. Trevor Knight, Hendon Hooker, Bryce Young. Like, what was your impressions of these two? I thought we learned a lot from both tonight.
Let me start here on a macro level. I just want to tip the cap and kind of extend what you guys were saying about Tennessee. This was a storybook, a children's story, whatever you want to call it, all the way scripted out. You have a great start at Tennessee. College game days coming to town. You're undefeated. Everybody's picking you to win against a team that has been the perennial powerhouse. But so often you're sitting there drawing the pictures and getting ready to publish this book, and the top dog comes in and ruins those dreams. And to have all of that build up and to still go out there and get it done and close the book and publish this thing, I thought was the biggest takeaway with what Tennessee did, and tip of the cap to those guys. Now, as far as the quarterbacks go, I was sitting here watching this game with no allegiance to either school, just giddy watching these guys play football. And I want to start with Bryce Young. Bryce Young is coming off of an injury, but I can say this: that will not be an excuse for Tennessee or for Bama saying, "Oh, well, Bryce Young was hurt. If this, if that." That dude came out and played some of his best football that I've ever seen. He was making all the throws. He was out there being the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. And him against Hendon Hooker, I mean, that was two guys saying, hey, look, I'll see you in New York at the end of the year, going back and forth. And it was almost this feeling like, all right, whoever gets the ball last is going to win this game. And Hendon Hooker going through the transfer portal, or however he got to Tennessee, stepping up against George the Roman Army and the previous year's Heisman Trophy winner and standing toe-to-toe and getting the win. That dude deserves, regardless of what goes on the rest of the season, that dude deserves a ticket to New York based off of his play tonight. I thought it was unbelievable.
Great point. In from our producer, Dagan Hughes, Alabama broke its own historic record, 17 penalties tonight, and that's not just under the Coach Saban Alabama Tide. That's all time, 17 penalties for 130 yards. But they still find themselves tie ball game going down the back stretch in the fourth quarter if they had to climb it from behind 28-10. Fellas, I was so impressed. First of all, Hendon Hooker, like guys are big, but you're big time on stages like this tonight. Like you're big, don't doubt. We see it. But if Tennessee would have lost, fans, they're not throwing stuff on the field. We lost to the Roman Army. We'll get them next time. We still get a New Year's Day bowl. But to win, to take that momentum and knock out a giant when they're also hot, no. I thought that was huge. Hendon Hooker was huge. His wide receiver, I don't have his name, 5 touchdowns on 6 grabs. That's some Travis Kelce type stat line right there. But Hendon Hooker was big, but just equal, as you both said it, Bryce Young. And it wasn't just an injury. It's on your throwing shoulder. It's on your throwing shoulder.
George, that's the one thing too. I don't mean to cut you off. Here's the one thing too, though, is I said this too Thursday. Like if I going into this game, the way this Alabama team was shaped up, like the way the defense was playing, all this stuff, like to me, if I'm Tennessee and I have the high powered offense, like I'm making Bryce Young beat me. I'm taking Jahmyr Gibbs out of the game. I'm forcing Bryce Young to beat me, and he exceeded expectations and then some. But but the thing is, the crazy thing is we sit here and acknowledge that people are going to overlook that, but he played phenomenal. He played above and beyond what you could have ever asked him to play. And that shows you how much Hendon Hooker and that offense at Tennessee actually showed up and met the challenge as well. Because if you're going to say, yo, Bryce Young, you got to beat me, reigning Heisman Trophy winner, you got to beat me. You got to show up as well, and you got to play out of your mind and into your realm of thought processes and things like that. And I think Tennessee did that as well, and ultimately it worked out that way, and it was great for college football because we saw just a duel for the ages. And
listen, I want to chime in here as well. I want to give a tip of the cap to Bryce Young again, very similar to the national championship game when we were all together in Indy. This is a guy that's on the road in a hostile environment, and you know what you're going to get from him. Even when he's got an injury in his throwing, like that is, he deserves the Dr. Pepper commercials that he's already in. He deserves every penny of that because he is absolutely spectacular, which I think gives more credit to Tennessee. Now, real quick, if A&M ends up converting on the last play last week, that's when you could say, well, they didn't have Bryce Young and this and that. And so this game, you can't say that. You have to give all the credit to Tennessee because you saw the best in Bryce Young.
Because Bryce Young played winning football, even in a loss. That's an anomaly sometimes. But you could still play winning football, and it doesn't come up for you. And tonight reminded me of last year when they played Auburn, and he had the 290-plus yard drives where you have to have it. Auburn only gave him 60, 70 yards rushing as a team all day. We must get through Auburn to get a chance at Georgia, and he does it in the fourth quarter. I think he's college football's best general, but they have a lot to clean up, though. 17 penalties. The defense really got exposed, and I'm watching that game and thinking in my mind, is this Ohio State and Bama? Is this what this looks like? Because to me, Tennessee offensively, it looks like the similar animal to Ohio State. The one's a Bengal tiger and one's a Siberian. Like now we have 2 tigers. They can both move and maul you. So the Roman army goes down 52-49 Tennessee. Fellas, where should they rank? Just watching ball, just looking at it quickly. Where should Tennessee rank when we all get up tomorrow?
I don't think it's crazy to say that they jump to 3 and just swap. Like, I think that's probably a fair statement.
Yeah,
I don't think you can.
I agree with that. I mean, the only argument would be that you put Michigan at 3, right? And then put Tennessee right behind them, just because they had a big win too, right? I don't
Correct.
know. Yeah.
Correct.
So
Alabama stays in the top 5, yes. They lost by a field goal expiring on the road to another top 10 team. That can't take. Yeah, correct. By my man McGrath. That was the heavyweight championship tonight. Well, that was the heavyweight championship down the South. We also had a heavyweight battle up in the North. The Big Ten, 2 of their 3 monsters got at it today. Michigan, Penn State. Everybody was curious. Neither one of these 2 teams. Well, really, you got to say it about Michigan because Penn State early on, they did go into Jordan-Hare and knock the hell out of Auburn. So we knew something about Penn State. Michigan, however, they've been playing some knockout ball against smaller opponents. They beat a solid Maryland team. They got together. Michigan 41-17, led by our man, what's our freshman quarterback's name?
JJ McCarthy.
JJ McCarthy. Sorry, I wanted to say Cade McNamara. But they finished up there big on the ground either way. Everybody knows those running backs. Hack, when you watched your boys tonight, your boys both Penn State and your boys both Big Ten, what was your biggest takeaway?
Listen, I'm not going to make excuses. Listen, they got dog. When you give up 418 yards on the ground, you gotta go home, lick your wounds, and figure it out for next week. But I don't think Penn State came out and played their best football. Just surface value. I don't think offensively, defensively, complimentary didn't come out and give Michigan their best shot. But I'm going to give Michigan their full-on roses, because if you can go out and command 418 yards against a Big Ten opponent like Penn State, you can do that against damn near anybody in the country, and I don't care who's pulling the trigger for you at that point in time. So that's a great thing to do. George, I think you might be on mute. I couldn't hear you, brother.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
I was just agreeing with you.
No, but I think anytime you can do that, man, huge tip of the cap. Penn State, like, you guys got to move on from this, because at the end of the day, you got a gauntlet coming down here. You got Minnesota next week, obviously fell down, and then you got Ohio State. So you got to figure it out. But Michigan's put themselves in a really good position to be staring down that Ohio State game here towards the end of the year. That's gonna ultimately determine the East, in my opinion.
Trevor, you've been part of two different cultures in college football, both with the Aggies and both with the Sooners. You've been on big runs. You've been on teams that have undefeated starts like this. For those kids in that locker room, for most of them, this is round two. They were undefeated like this last year, but it was like kind of new territory. The further they ventured, the more they looked around and like, wow, we're really here. Then they get themselves into the playoffs. Now here they are again, started in the top five, still in the top five, big knockout win today. How valuable is this confidence of seeing yourself knock out teams and you start to carry yourself like a national power?
Yeah, that the experience, to your point, George, it is a huge deal. Young guys that watched older guys that have now moved on playing on Sundays, set the tone and develop that culture. Anytime you have a player-run locker room, you're going to have better leaders and more success in the long run. And so the fact that they were there last year, these guys have been there, they can taste it, they can see it. It's now, halfway through the season. I'm looking, the end is in sight. Now, obviously it's 1 week at a time and all those things, but I will say this. We always talk about, does this game say more about Michigan winning the game or more about Penn State losing the game, and what side do you go on? I think Penn State, to your point, Hack, lick their wounds. They're still going to win a bunch of games in the East. I don't think this was so much as Penn State is bad as it is Michigan is the real deal. And building on that confidence, George, from last year is huge. I mean, you talk about the 400 plus yards on the ground, but we've hit it over the head that Blake Corum is the man. He wasn't even the top rusher today. He was over 150 yards, and he wasn't even the top rusher. So you go, Donovan Edwards, who rushes for more yards than Blake Corum. That's a confidence booster for him. So when his name is called upon down the stretch here, now you've got confidence in two guys that have confidence in themselves that now go out there and we're just rolling. Now, JJ McCarthy's looking at both of these guys. I trust you. Let's rock and roll. Defense is looking to the offense. They're waving from the other end of the bench. Hey, we're going to get you back on the field. I'm going to get you back on the field. And that's when teams start to roll. And I think Michigan has this kind of culture brewing to have a pretty special end of the season.
They have now quickly embraced that Motor City Ford tough attitude, spirit that they have in their neighbor right there in Detroit. Fellas, Michigan ran the ball 55 times. 55. There's some colleges that haven't run it 55 times yet. like just in October, 50. That's not a dedication. That's a lifestyle. And then we have to, they're not talking about we need to run the ball. Hack, defense and rushing travel. We talked about that. Those things are they're portable. You could pack that up and take it anywhere with you. They won't fail. Is that enough given the rest of the landscape and what we see out of the rest? And then Trevor, I want you to talk about Michigan's offensive line probably being the unsung rock stars with these guys that are running 30, 40, 50 yards downfield to finish plays.
Yep.
Yeah, I think anytime you can dominate an opposing team, I think they won the time of possession battle like 41 minutes to 18 minutes today against Penn State. Like, it was ridiculous. They dominated them. Whenever you can do that, it doesn't matter who's pulling the trigger. You could have Ohio State over there all you want, but if them horses are are in the pens and in the stable, and they don't have a chance to do anything with them, hey, it looks great, but you're not going to get any production out of it. So those guys need to be on the track, and they need to have reps, and they need to have chances. So if you can command a lot of scrimmage, to your point, George, it's a simple game, man. Like, you can turn around and hand the ball off for 3.5 yards every time. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it all day long, and I'm just going to eat up that clock, and I'm going to give you limited chances. I'm going to walk my score in and keep it going. So I think this Michigan team's found a lot of success in that. And I think the nice thing is it's bringing along a very dynamic player in their quarterback position in J.J. McCarthy, who young guy, needs to learn, but when you got something like that to rely on, and I think Trevor can talk to this as well, man, dude, it's a huge confidence booster. They got some guys outside. They got a great tight end room. He's just going to continue to develop, and they're going to put him in really good situations. And, it may be this year where it pops, and if it does, it could be really scary. But I think moving forward throughout the next couple of years, when he starts really coming into his own and growing into his oats, he's going to be a damn problem on the national stage.
Yeah, Trevor, I changed my mind, unless you really want to answer that question about the O-lineman. To Hack's point, J.J. McCarthy is afforded time. First, he's basically redshirted last year, and they gave him a couple series and games all the way through the playoffs. And now they've got the Big Ten's one or two best defense and one of the nation's top rushing attack. And you get a chance to go in there. This is like Russell Wilson stuff with the Seahawks. Legion of Boom, you got Marshawn Lynch behind you, and then you just make a couple plays for us, when you can throughout the course of those 4 quarters. How much of a luxury is that for J.J. McCarthy? And then when will he have to start contributing more as we go?
Well, I think throughout this offseason and kind of the QB battle, he doesn't start the year as the starter. You got to remember that. And there's a couple quarterbacks that we can point that finger at. But he kind of knew, right? We talked about that a little bit. He kind of knew he was going to end up being the guy. Now he's the guy. He's got all these weapons around him. He needs to just focus on, and I know this sounds backwards, but not screwing up. All right? Just get the ball in your playmakers' hands. Trust those O-linemen in front of you to do what they do. Hand the ball off to Blake Corum. Make the throws that you're supposed to make and move on down the road. If you do that, you're going to be successful. In my opinion, not quite to the level of what we saw last year out of the Georgia team, but very similar in the fact that, hey, put JT Daniels in there or put anybody else in there for that matter, and these guys are going to operate. Just don't screw it up. That being said, I do want to talk about the offensive line. These guys, after rushing for 400 yards today, we don't even know their names. I couldn't name one of their offensive linemen. But it's something special about that O-line group. Those guys are probably all 5 together as we speak, sitting at a bar, drinking beers together. They're probably in their warm-ups because that's how they roll. But when those guys get together like that and they have that culture from an O-line meeting room, that is something special. And their chests are puffed out. And nobody's patting them on the back, and they're not going to be in the papers. But when they rush for 400 yards, they wear that. They wear that like we do wearing touchdown passes, and they are stoked as an O-line group to have that happen this week. That's going to give them more confidence to give J.J. McCarthy a ton of time to throw the ball and to create big, gaping holes for Blake Corum and the rest of that stable to make some big runs.
I'm going to do throwback. That group's throwback, George.
They are. Let's say their names. This is the first time on Field of 12. Ryan Hayes is Ryan Hayes, Trevor Keegan. Olu is the center. Greg Crippen and Zach Zenter is the right side tackle and guard. Hayes, Keegan, Olu, Crippen, and Zenter. Fellas, that's a toast, man. 55 rushes, and they keep betting on you.
We have a producer, Dagan. You got the hotline up to a couple bars in Ann Arbor, right? Let's send those guys a beer.
Yeah, send them a beer, courtesy of us. Hopefully, maybe not a natty light. Field of 12 is making big moves. All right. Big 10 learned a lot about itself today. So did the Big 12. The Big 12, probably, honestly, if we're being real about it, the most competitive league, top to bottom. They're still sorting things out today. They had a big one. Trevor, I'm going to start with you. TCU double overtime, 43-40. Remain undefeated. They took on an undefeated tonight, Oklahoma State. Great game. They finished it strong, pretty even all the way across the board. But Sonny Dykes continues to roll. 13th in the country. They just knocked out number 8. They're going to obviously take a big jump. Big 12 chances are still alive. How much should we pay attention to TCU nationally?
I think at this point, again, a lot of ball left to play, but you've got to give them respect that is due. I coming into this weekend, I really thought it's Oklahoma State and everybody else in the Big 12. Everybody's beating up on each other. You've got, a couple of teams that should be at the top that aren't playing good football, a couple of teams that are rising to the occasion, beating up on each other. And I thought Oklahoma State and Spencer Sanders, who's playing a lot more consistent this year, we're just going to stay there at the top, cruise on through the Big 12, go unscathed, and be in the discussion for the playoff at the end of the year. This threw a huge wrench into my plans there. And I'll say, I'm going to call out one guy. And obviously we talk a lot about quarterbacks on the show, but Max Duggan, again, a guy that did not start the year as the starting quarterback at this university. New head coach, so on and so forth. He gets his opportunity, and all he's done each week is get better and better and better. And when he's called upon, he makes the plays that he needs to make. Now, he wasn't perfect tonight. He didn't play like Bryce Young. He didn't play like Hendon Hooker, but he played well enough to get these guys a huge win over a lot of preseason favorite. A lot of people pick Oklahoma State to be the preseason favorite, and they were certainly in the driver's seat. Again, back to my toast at the beginning of the show, Sonny Dykes has got something rolling. I don't know what's in the water and what he puts in the Gatorade coolers at practice, but he gets guys ready to play, and he gets the most out of each and every individual on that field.
Again, TCU, big knockout. They have now positioned themselves. If we ended ball today, TCU in Texas would be the Big 12 championship. These guys came out of nowhere and now have positioned themselves for a big postseason finish. Fellas, all these finishes have come off of big-time performers. If college football, if we stop playing ball today and we got asked to send 4 kids to New York, not necessarily in any order, 4 kids going to New York, one of them is a non-quarterback. Who are you going to send? Trevor, I'm going to start with you.
If it was today, the non-quarterback to me would be Blake Corum, a team that's playing really good football. We just talked about it a lot, toting the rock, just steady. Week in and week out, you know what you can expect from him. That would be my one that's not a quarterback right now.
Well, who's your other 3, though? Give me your 4 guys.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Coming into the night, I had Caleb Williams in there. I will throw him out of the list just because of the loss, although I thought he played pretty good football most of the night. But C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, who we saw, and Hendon Hooker. Those are my 3 along with Blake Corum. And then you could talk about Caleb Williams maybe getting in there as well.
Hack. So Trevor went Michigan tailback.
Yep.
Bryce Young, Hendon Hooker, C.J. Stroud. Do you differ with any of those?
No, I don't. I think those three are definitely in there. And just to be different, this is for our guy, producer Trevor. Well, I agree. When you look at this, you look on the landscape of things, this guy's making some noise. If this team can mess around and play spoiler in their conference, this guy can make a case for his name. Chase Brown at the University of Illinois, running back. Stud. He's been doing some good things back there. Really good things on the national scale. So, that's another guy I'd throw in there.
I love it. I don't differ a bunch from – we all have the same non-quarterback. Blake Corum, again, when they hook the wagon to you at a top 5 program and you deliver every day and sometimes twice, you earned a seat in New York. CJ Stroud, to me, he's got pole position. Hendon Hooker has just played his way into New York. And that third guy for me quarterback wise, and it's kind of rotated between kind of Bryce Young and Caleb Williams. I do think Cam Rising will make some noise. He's going to have some big storybook end of the year games coming. But to me, it's Bryce Young. And it's Bryce Young because of nights like tonight. Stroud, Hooker, Bryce Young, and Corum. Trevor, if you had to bet half your 2023 income, who would you say would win it today? The single guy right now.
A lot of it is fan voting, right? Which plays big into it. I think CJ Stroud and Ohio State, especially not even playing on so far, like it's all emotional. This weekend was the biggest weekend in college football. So much excitement, and CJ Stroud is sitting on the couch, thinking that, man, I didn't have to go through any of this craziness, and we're gonna move on. He is in the driver's seat, but Hendon Hooker is making the most noise right now. If Hendon Hooker continues to do what he's doing, if they go beat Kentucky, if they beat
Georgia, he slays the 2 Giants.
Watch
out, the Giants, no doubt.
Who did that? Who was the last person to do that?
Yeah, I agree.
Can't name him.
But I'll say this too: like last year, we talked about Bryce Young, a little CJ Stroud, and remind me if I'm missing somebody, but it wasn't like a crazy big group going to New York. This year, we're talking Cam Rising. We're talking DTR even, right? If they keep winning, you've got so many more guys that you're like, all right, any other year you might go, but boom, 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 the guys that we just mentioned. To answer your question, though, I think if you put a gun to my head and I had to put my salary on it, man, I go Hendon Hooker if he does those things.
I was not expecting that.
The Hendon Hooker,
as he finishes that drink.
You could go through Trevor Knight for all your Hendon Hooker gear. It's trevorknight.com.
It's an emotional thing. It was a big game. But now you guys have to answer. I'm curious. I'd love to hear your
Hack. You signing up? Are you going to buy that package off of him?
Here's what I will buy. I will buy that this dude, if he messes around and runs the table here in the SEC,
gets the White Walkers,
and it gets the White Walkers and is representing the SEC East in the SEC championship game,
it's over right there.
It's over. It's over. But that's a big if. That's a big if. Field68.shop. There is a couple of ones. I just retweeted it on my Twitter. I'm sure you guys will too. But I'm gonna bet if I'm betting house money. I mean, I'm betting on CJ Stroud. I think they're still gonna roll it, getting Jackson Smith and Jigba back, who was one of the dark horse picks for the Heisman, one of the best college football players, I think, overall, just position difference makers. Getting him back full and healthy here for the second half of the year, I think it's going to be a difference, especially with Marvin Harrison Jr. and the other horses they got in those stables. So CJ Stroud would be the one I'm betting on.
I'm going to make mine fast. CJ Stroud is the one I'm betting on. I think it's going to be drama. I think it'll be one of the closer Heisman races we've had. I think it'll be Stroud and Hooker, who coincidentally, I hope that's who, in a perfect world, can you imagine if we quit playing ball today, a Tennessee-Ohio State game in a neutral site? But for those of you at home, let me get you some volume. Go to Field of 12. Go to Field of 12. Get the Heisman 5 shirt. Hendon Hooker. There you go right there. Vols fans, while you're there at the bar, you can order this shirt online right now. Hendon already got 10 of them. He just texted me. Get you some of these. Get the great Christmas gifts. Go right now. Field of Is it Field of 12
Field
or
of
Field of
68 shop.
Field of 68 shop. Field of 68 shop. Your mother-in-law, your girl, I'm telling you, you cannot lose with that. There's our Heisman predictions. Trevor is going with Hendon Hooker. Hack and I both say Stroud with Hooker with some drama. I think it's going to be some drama, but I do think it'll go to the Buckeye because of what they have to overcome. Fellas, back to football. Hack, I'm going to go with you. Texas, like we still don't know who they are. They get up for the big ones, and they kind of have a little bit of that hangover coming in for the middleweight battles. They survived tonight. A win is a win, but they survived at home against the 3-3 Iowa State team, 27-24. It doesn't give you confidence, but it doesn't give them an L either. How should we feel about the Longhorns so far?
Listen, I don't think this Iowa State team is your average 3-3 team walking around on the streets.
That's true. Give them the stat.
For various reasons. I believe that they have lost. Their 3 losses are by a combined 3 losses combined 14 points. I believe they lost by 7. 4 losses. 4 losses.
How about
combined
that?
14 points. So 7,
that's a field goal
3, 3, 1. So that's tough. And at the end of the day, like I said, I don't think you can really look at them just face value on their record. But this Texas team, man, they're in it. And I've said it before. I think if their defense can play the way that they showed up against that Alabama team consistently, week in, week out, and it's not even like they have to play at that level. They just have to continue to build to that and get to that by the end of the year here. And really this next probably 3 or 4 game stretch. I believe Quinn Ewers is a difference maker for them on offense, and we'll see how it continues to play out. But they're going to give themselves a run at the Big 12 championship game. I do believe that.
That'd be good. Good for Sark. Trevor, it is good. Like you want to see those big classic programs in college football who are working at it. You do want to see them stand up. You do want to see them bowed up and clear-eyed and going after people. It's tough watching Miami and Nebraska. Hell, SC 6 months ago get drug all over the place. Texas 27, Iowa State 24. Trevor, I'm gonna jump to you with Hack. Clemson escapes. Hard to say they escaped. They just outlasted Florida State, I think is a more fair assessment. 34-28. DJU got down there and got rolling a little bit. Enough to stave off another catastrophe. Clemson remains undefeated. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. But do you still have that national top 4 faith in them? Are they one of the 4 best programs? If you just take a look at it, are they one of the 4 best programs right now, Clemson Tigers?
It's tough. It's tough to answer that question, George, and here's why. I really do think Clemson is out on an island, and it's of no fault to their own, but I think they play in an inferior conference. I think that you've got some of the better teams in the Big Ten and in the SEC right now that are going up and playing in big-time games and going up against incredible talent. And Clemson's just out there on the East Coast, and they're winning football games, but they're not mauling people like maybe some of the years we've seen in the past. They're not having to face any big-time talent. So it's tough to say, right? Like we talked about it earlier in the show. Being there before goes a long way. If Clemson goes unscathed and finds themselves in the playoff based on history and based on the logo, which I'd love to have that discussion as well, right? If they go unscathed, are they in over some of these other big dogs that we've talked about? But if they go unscathed and get in, because they've been there, does it matter that they've played inferior talent, or will they rise to the occasion? I just don't know. I think DJ's playing pretty good ball. He had a good day today. I think that they've got a good culture going there, but they're certainly beatable. My gut tells me if you put Clemson up against Alabama, if you put Clemson up against Ohio State or Michigan or Georgia today, my gut tells me they go down. Historically, and history tells me that's probably a dumb move, but my gut tells me they go down today.
What's the biggest difference they lack from the teams of the past of Clemson that you'd say, you know, they just look like superhero teams?
I really think it's that they're in an inferior conference and they're not mauling people the way I would like to see them mauled, but they're winning football games, right? It's just that's why it's tough for me to answer. Hack, what are your thoughts, dude?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I don't think it's the Clemson of old in the ACC. You know, the Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence era. Like, I mean, even going back to Taj Boyd. I mean, they were mauling the ACC pretty much up and down. I don't think they're built that way right now. Obviously last year I think kind of sucked. I think they have certain pieces. I think their front seven is very, very good. I do think DJ has turned it around. I just don't think DJ has as strong of a supporting cast as some of those aforementioned quarterbacks have had.
That's fair.
In terms of just being proven, consistent, you know, running back stable with receivers, and I mean even the tight end spot. I don't think he does, traditionally speaking. Now, are they bad players? Absolutely not. They're good football players, but you know, I just think it's different. And I think when you look at this Clemson team for what they've done and what they're doing, it's going to be really hard if they continue to run it in the ACC and they're undefeated. And it's like, oh well, you know, they had a little bit of a rough patch last year. It's almost like you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. But to Trevor's point, I think that there's two conferences that if you have two teams in the same division of those conferences, everything plays out the way it should be. One beats the other one, and then the other one beats the team that they just beat in the SEC championship game. And then you go over to into the Big Ten East, and you have Michigan and Ohio State. They beat up on each other, and then whoever gets in the Big Ten championship game wins that easily. I would make the argument, as I did last year, that you should have a showdown of the Big Ten East and the SEC, whichever side of that conference. Well, no, not the West. Right. Not the West. Right. It's the SEC East now.
East, yeah.
It's the SEC East now with the Tennessee and Georgia showdown. And Kentucky. That's what I would say. Yeah, Kentucky. But, you know, hey, Kentucky's kind of played their way out of it as of late. I think they can still play dark horse and spoiler, without a doubt. It's a really good football team. But I think as long as Tennessee can survive the Kentucky challenge and Georgia can survive it, I think that'd be an much more interesting conversation than Georgia or than Clemson at this point in time right now.
George, let me ask you this question because I love your thoughts on this kind of stuff. If Tennessee goes unscathed except for they lose to Georgia, that's their only loss, and it's a great game. It's a close game. They lose
3
on
points.
a last-second field goal, right?
Yeah.
Hendon Hooker goes off. It's like the game tonight, except for it goes Georgia's way. Georgia goes to the SEC title game, and Bryce Young takes them down. Who goes? That's what we were talking about, right?
Yeah, all three have a loss to each other.
Who do you put in?
Well, you're going to get 2, in my opinion. You're going to get 2 because at that point, they're all in the top 5 or 6.
Who's the odd man?
Wait, I asked that wrong.
You did ask that wrong.
Georgia goes to the title game, obviously, because they beat Tennessee, but Georgia beats Alabama. So now Alabama has
by 10.
By 10.
They beat it by 10.
Oh, and Tennessee beat Georgia.
Yes. Do you put Tennessee and Georgia from the same side of the conference?
Georgia beats Tennessee by 3. And then Tennessee, and then, you know, obviously Tennessee's not going to represent the East in the SEC championship game. And then Georgia waltzes into the SEC championship game against an Alabama team who presumably runs the West. And they beat this Alabama team by 10 points.
That's it.
So they all 3 have a loss to each other.
So they all 3 have a loss kind of to each other, yes.
Alabama
would have 2.
The point is, do you put Tennessee in over a Clemson at that point? Georgia's in. Georgia wins the SEC. Georgia's in. They're unscathed. Do you put Tennessee in as a one-loss, non-conference East team?
Yeah, non-conference championship representative.
Over a potential UCLA or Clemson or so on and so forth.
Not if UCLA. If UCLA and Clemson are undefeated,
George.
No, you
but
got to go with
Georgia.
You got to go with the an undefeated conference champ, even though that conference is not Jurassic Park level. If UCLA is an undefeated conference champ, then the road is clear. Same for Clemson. If Clemson's a champ with a loss, or UCLA is a champ with a loss, to me, they're just susceptible to be weighing the same thing as Tennessee. And Tennessee will have two of the biggest wins in college football. The Vols hot
the
both
same
of those
season.
Same season. And Hack, what they're going to say is, well, hell, if we put Clemson and Tennessee in the same field right now, and definitely Tennessee and UCLA, what are we talking about? They beat the two monsters, the only two teams that we've even named, the Roman Army and the White Walkers.
Toe-to-toe with them.
The toe-to-toe with them.
They split with them. They split with them, but everything's within a field goal, basically.
Now, what would be interesting is if Alabama ran the table all the way out and Tennessee, undefeated, lost to Georgia, and then
Georgia lost to Alabama, like you
Georgia
said.
lost to Alabama, and they all have a loss. Now we're into something. We're going to do that next week. Let's stay in that SEC East side, Jurassic Park. Fellas, of the last three teams, these last three games, and we're coming down to that, we're in our own ninth inning. Kentucky wins solid, 27-17 to a Mississippi State team is arguably one of the 5 or 6 best offenses maybe in college football, just efficiency-wise. Kentucky beats Mississippi State. Syracuse, nice win over NC State. They remain 6-0. It's like the first time in like 20-something years they've done that. And Brett Bielema in Illinois, they go 6-1. They beat Minnesota today. And lastly, Oklahoma staves off. I'm not even going to say staved off disaster because it's still disastrous. They have now contained the fire. Out here in California, they'll say that they've at least contained it. The fire is not out. Kentucky's win, Syracuse's win, Illinois' win, Oklahoma not losing a fourth one at home against Kansas. What was the most valuable win of those 4? Trevor, I'll go with you and then Hack.
The most valuable win of those 4? I could pick a couple. I'll go one with, and maybe you guys won't talk about it. I'll say Syracuse. I think Syracuse now has put them in a position, which is super sneaky, to go next week and potentially knock off Clemson. That's their Super Bowl next week.
That's the game next week.
The game next week is Clemson and Syracuse. If Clemson could survive that one, then they should run the table. They do have to play Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's obviously been up and down. But that's the game in the ACC for the rest of the season. That's the SEC title or the ACC title game, so to speak, next weekend. Dino Babers has been there for a while now. I think he's developed a really cool culture at Syracuse, a culture of winning, again, without the best talent in the world. It's their Super Bowl next weekend, so I'll say most valuable, Syracuse. Keep winning.
Hack, I'm going to go to you here. Who had the most valuable win? Syracuse, Illinois, who's now 6-1, Oklahoma containing that would have been just the apocalypse if Kansas beat them for their 4th straight loss. Who had the most valuable win today?
It depends on what your definition of value is. I think if you're talking about program saving, it's definitely Oklahoma, because I think, for like to your point, 4 in a row, Brent Venables haven't played that dude. Who knows what would have happened there? Who knows? Especially with buyouts, all this crazy shit going on. Who knows? But I will flip that over. I think Illinois has positioned themselves to win the Big Ten West.
How about that?
They continue to go. They've positioned themselves to win the Big Ten West, and they got a shot.
They got a shot. And we're with them. The Fighting Illini, the Fighting Brett Bielemas, and Trevor Valises. I'm George Whitfield, Christian Hackenberg, Trevor Knight. On behalf of producers Dagan Hughes and Trevor Valise, Field of 12 After Dark, huge day today. We'll see you next week.